Hello, everyone. My name is Lin Huynh. I'm the founder and host of Fan to Fame. We're here today with one of the best ever to step on the track. She was a former U.S. national champion and represented the United States in the 400-meter hurdles at the 2012 London Olympics. With that being said, please help me in welcoming former track and field superstar and Olympian, Tiara Brown. How are you, Tiara?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I appreciate your time, first and foremost. You're someone that I was very excited to speak to because I don't care if you watch sports or not, but just hearing Olympics, that's something that really gravitates people, and not many people can say that. So I definitely remember watching you. I definitely was rooting for you. So it's a blessing to speak to you. So I appreciate your time and look
Thank
forward to hearing about
you.
your story and some advice you could share with the youth that's trying to follow your footsteps.
Yeah, for sure. No problem.
Awesome. So, from my understanding, you grew up in South Carolina. Your family moved to Virginia, settled in Hampton, Virginia. You were a three-time VA state champion in a 300-meter hurdles. Can you talk about how did you get into track and what made you choose the hurdles at all the events?
So I don't remember how old I was. I'm pretty old now, so my memory is bad. But I started playing basketball and baseball.
Okay.
And I had a big basketball game. And the thing about me, I have always been faster than a lot of kids.
Hmm.
So I sucked at basketball, but I was great on defense because I would just, they would steal the ball. I would already be down the court because I'm faster than everybody, and then I would just
Uh-huh.
do my layup. That's as good as you was gonna get from me. So one game, after our game, this guy who ended up being my coach, his name was Coach Baton. He
Okay.
came up to my mom and me. He was like, "Hey, did you ever think about running track?" And I did the whole barefoot street races, and but I never was like, "Oh, let me go run track." So he was
Right.
like, "Just come out to one of our practices. I'm going to time you, and we'll go from there." So I ended up going out to Davis Middle School in the back of their track. And to the life of me, I cannot remember if I had to run a 300 or a 400. I cannot remember. All I know is I did it under a minute,
Hmm.
and everybody was so excited. I was like, "Oh my gosh, she's so fast." And I was like, "Okay, I guess so." So that's pretty much how I started running track. So I went out to practice. And for me, I just can't run. Like at the time, I was like, I don't think I just want to run around the track. And then it was like, "Well, you're pretty tall. Do you want to hurdle?" And I was like, "Okay, that looks fun."
Right. Mix it up a
So
little bit.
I was like, "Yeah, let's hurdle." So I started hurdling. I was even a jumper at some point, sucked at that. But yeah, from there I was like, well, I just want to hurdle. So
Right.
that's pretty much what I focused on. I ran the 200 hurdles at that age group. Um, Ran the 100 hurdles. Did I? I can't remember. I think I did. But pretty much the longer hurdles was my jam.
Okay.
And that's pretty much how I started running. And that's all I did. I did play basketball in high school.
Hmm.
Once again, I was not good. And I kind of got kicked off the basketball team because I was like, I was having so much fun playing basketball that I
Right.
really didn't want to run track, even though everybody knew that I was a track runner.
Right.
Um, so there was this whole situation, and my coach got mad. So I ended up not being able to play basketball. They just made me the stat girl, which sucked, but what can I do? They helped me at the end of the day. They knew I
Right.
was not going to the WNBA at all. So yeah, that's kind of like how I got started. And I just ran track from there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Honestly, you're probably a lot better at basketball than you think. I think a lot of people doubt themselves, but I think that was a great route. I mean, it ended up working out for you.
Yeah,
You
I
were
mean,
part of
I'm
the team
not a
for a reason.
shooter.
You couldn't have been that bad if you're part of the team.
No, I mean, like I said, I was fast. And
Right.
I think I was a great defensive player, but I
That's
couldn't
important
shoot
to
the
the
ball.
game. You
And
need to play
then I
defense.
was left-handed. And so if it was a fast break and I was on the right side of the court, I would always go over and cut across the left side of the court. And the coach would get mad. And I'm like, I cannot do a right-handed layup. I am
Right.
left-handed. What you want from me? So no, I was not good at all.
Well, as long as you're staying active, that's the most important thing, I think, for anyone. I have like cousins or nieces and nephews. I'm like, hey, as long as you do something, because I think there's a lot of great
Yeah.
things that come out of sport. It's one, stay away from the screen all day, do something active, and then you build a lot of character from it. So
Yeah,
it comes a
exactly.
long way. As long as you're trying, that's the main thing.
Yeah.
So the hurdles, I actually ran track too. Of course, I was not Olympian like you. I wasn't like a
Mhm.
state I didn't get state achievements, but I did a 400, I did 100 and such. Hurdles always freaked me out. I'm not gonna lie. Like I would freak out. Like they're like, "Why don't you try hurdles?" First of all, I'm sure. I was like, "That's probably not gonna work out, but let me give it a try." I think I fell. I probably did the first time. But did you ever had that fear of like jumping over hurdles when you first started? And if so, how did you overcome it? Or if someone does have that feeling, what's your advice for them?
I never had a fear of going
Okay.
over the hurdles. I didn't even
Maybe it's
look at
just
it as
me.
a
Maybe it's just
challenge.
me then.
I think I was just so natural at it,
Okay.
to the point where there was never any type of fear, really.
Right.
Um, there was one time I was scared to go over the hurdles, which is so funny. It was NCAA championships when I actually won. It was in Des Moines, Iowa. It was pouring down raining. And I was just like, this is dangerous. Like, I don't want
Yeah.
to do this. Like, I low-key was scared. I had anxiety. But that's like the only time, really, because, the weather. But I just never looked at it. Even when I fell plenty of times. I fell in races when I was a little bit younger. I just always got back up.
Right.
The thing is, like, yes, it's an obstacle in front of you, but
Hmm.
and it's going to sound ridiculous, but you have to just run through the hurdle. Like you literally
Yeah.
are just running through the hurdle, even though you're hurdling the hurdle,
Going
not
over it.
necessarily jumping it. You just got to just run through it. Like I don't
Right.
even look at the hurdle really when I'm going over them.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, okay, I'm just programmed to know it's there, especially with
Right.
your steps and stuff. Um, if you're scared of it, I'm not gonna say don't do it, but you just gotta. I would just say just keep practicing. Practice with one hurdle.
Right.
Make sure you got your form down pat. Do drills. Just get very comfortable with the hurdle and become
Mhm.
one with the hurdle.
Oh, like,
And
okay.
if you fall, just get back up. I guess you know.
Right. Just do it, right? Just do it. I mean, it's
Yeah,
not going to kill
like
you. You might fall, but you fall in any other sport, anything else you do. So
right.
something just
Might as well
overcome.
just get back up and just keep trying at it. If it's something that you really want to do and you have a passion for it, even if you don't
Yeah,
have passion for it, but you want to challenge yourself, just
absolutely,
go through it. Just run through the hurdle. It's there.
absolutely.
Go about your business.
Good advice. Next time I'm over any time near a hurdle, I'm gonna try to challenge myself and remember this conversation when I do it.
Just go on the lowest level. Go at 30.
Maybe lower.
And just
Maybe
go from
lower.
time. If you got some adjustable ones that can go lower, to go lower. But it's fine.
That's too funny. Well, after high school, you ended up going to Miami, University of Miami. I'm a huge football fan of theirs. The U, some of my
Yeah.
favorite football player. I actually have a Santana Moss autograph back here.
Oh,
Clem
wow,
Portis, a
okay.
bunch of those guys. So I love Miami. It's a beautiful place, beautiful weather. So what helped with your decision going there? Was there other options that you had, and what made you go there? And was it adjustment? Talking about climate, it's very humid down there. Was that ever an issue? Can you just talk about that experience down in Miami?
So when I was, getting ready to figure out what college I want to go to, I was top 5 in the country.
Yeah.
But the problem was all the schools on my list had taken 1 through 4. So I was
Okay.
5.
Okay.
And, they really didn't have another spot for a hurdler.
Mhm.
So I ended up taking visits to, where did I go? I went to Virginia Tech, which everybody thought I was going to go there. I mean, I did too, but
Right.
I was not with that cold life and secluded.
I
If
think
you
you made a
know
good
Virginia Tech, you
decision.
know how it is,
Yeah.
right? Virginia Tech, Illinois, which I
Mhm.
absolutely love. Coach Tanja at the time, she was just like, I honestly still don't know why I didn't go there, but it was too cold. I went
Right.
there and it was snowing, and I was like, no. I went to, the North Carolina schools. I went to UNC. Where else did I go? I went to Georgia Tech. I'm missing somebody. I went to UVA actually too.
Okay.
I mean,
Well, you
they
got
had
it.
no
It's Virginia.
big,
You lived in Virginia at the
big.
time. You kind of you got to at least give them a
Listen.
visit.
So I thoroughly enjoyed Virginia Tech in Illinois, but once again, I just didn't want to go there. Like I wanted to go where I wanted to go. I wanted to either go to Texas, Tennessee, or South Carolina. Those was like my top schools, in
Okay.
UCLA. So once again, I'm not playing basketball, but I'm still a
Right.
part of the team. And Coach Six, who's the basketball coach at Hampton High School, he was like, "Yo, T, what's wrong?" And I was like, I can't. I'm not getting the schools that I want to get.
Mhm.
And my coach, who was actually my coach who started me off, Coach Bain, he was my high school coach too.
Okay.
He really didn't have to go through the recruiting process with any athlete. I was kind of like the first one. So he really wasn't too familiar on that process. So I know I was down and out, really depressed, like, where am I going to go? Coach Six was like, okay, well, where do you want to go? And I gave him my list and I threw Miami on the list.
Okay.
And then so randomly one day at school, I get called over like the PA system talking about come to the principal's office. I'm like, what did I do? Like, a couple weeks before that, we skipped class, me and the basketball team, because they had one.
Maybe that might have caught up to you guys, maybe.
We got caught. But
I
was thinking, like, why else are you? So I went in the office and she was like, somebody's on the phone for you. Coach Six is standing there, and it ended up being Coach Dean at Miami. And at this point in time, I had already taken all 5 of my visits. Okay. And so I was like, oh my God, Miami, I already took all 5 of my visits. Like, what am I going to do? I immediately called my mom and I was like, Mom, I love you so much. If you could just buy me a plane ticket to Miami. Because at that point, you use 5 of your official visits. That's it. You don't get no more. Okay. Either you got to fund your own trip. I happened to have a cousin down there who lived in Miami from my stepdad's side.
Okay.
And it ended up working out. My mom got me a ticket.
Right.
He picked me up, went and did my visit. It wasn't even like the best visit I had, but when I instantly landed, and it was just like
the palm trees and all that.
It was just
weather.
The coral buildings. I was like, the sun. I was like, oh, I'm going here. And it was so funny because, and Coach Dean still don't believe that she told me this, but she was just like, so I love running the 4x4 with my high school girls. And I was like, in a meeting with her, I was like, well, I really love the 4x4. She was like, oh, well, we really don't need you for the 4x4. Like, we got that covered. And like anybody else would have been like, oh, I don't want to go here. But I was like, oh, she's going to put me on that 4x4 anyway, which she ended up doing.
There you go. Stay persistent.
It was just like,
you gotta stay persistent.
I got possessed with the sun, and it was just the most beautiful place I've ever been. And I was like, I'm going here.
Yeah.
And so that was my decision. I went there, and the weather at first really didn't bother me. We had those days where, we was in our blocks and we had to pour water on the track because it's so hot and your knees are burning. Right. Like literally had blisters from the track. Now you get used to it, Right. It wasn't bad though.
No, that's cool. Miami's definitely one of the places. I went there, and I see myself going back there each year. I think since the first time I went back, it's just like you said. It's just right when you land, you see the palm trees. You're going to the airport, just seeing the sun. You're like, what am I doing up in Virginia, where it's always cold most of the time? Or so I definitely hear you on that.
It's Chicago. I'm in Chicago right now, and I believe it's like maybe 10 degrees outside. And so all the times when I was in Miami, I was like, I'm never going to the beach. I hate it here. Like, I definitely am regretting that right now because I really wish I was down there.
That's true. Well, Chicago's beautiful too. There's different parts of it, different times. It's summertime's a great time, but wintertime, I might stay in Virginia. It's a little bit, just a tad warmer, not as cold. That's cool though. When you went to, so after going to Miami, you punched your ticket in to the 2012 Olympics in London. Can you talk about what was the first feeling that came up, and when you realized that you're going to represent the United States as part of the track and field team? What first kind of came to mind?
Well, I don't know. It was just like pure. I think I'll say, so my story for how I even made the team is kind of crazy. Okay. So obviously the year before that, I won nationals. And I believe it was Worlds that year. I believe it was Worlds, and I missed the team by 1 spot. So I won NCAAs. It was like this hype. I turned pro, and then it was like a couple weeks later, USA's, and I missed the team. And I was like, dang, like this is not a great, pro debut. So I'm glad I was able to redeem myself. I came back, was in great shape, and I made the finals. The night before the finals, so I went out to eat. I'm not going to call the restaurant name out, but I had some salmon, and I literally was sick. I had food poisoning. So you can just imagine how stressed out coach is. My agents, like, they're trying to bring me everything that's legally that I can take without it being in my system. So And
Oh
my
no. Yeah.
boyfriend was there at the time, and it was just like so horrible. I was like, how am I going to make this team? I
Mhm.
haven't been able to keep anything down. So I literally, and this is vulgar, I literally threw up that morning,
Mm.
threw up at warm-ups before I even went on the track. And I was just like, Lord, you can just
Yeah.
give me the strength that I need
Right.
to run anything in the 54s and
Right.
just win. And so
Wow.
I looked super cut up in all of the pictures. And it's so funny because that's the only thing I think of how sick I was when I think
Okay.
back to that moment. I ended up getting third. I don't know how I was able to do it. I had no energy. I had no strength. I was
Oh my
sick.
gosh. Yeah.
And it was just like a sigh of relief. And the only thing I really wanted to do was like do my victory lap and just
Right.
hug my mom. And so I
Yeah.
have like the picture of me just hugging her. And it was just like the greatest moment. And I think I was like in a little bit of shock. It really didn't hit me
Right.
until
Right.
it was like the next day. And I was actually going inside one of the banquet rooms where they had the processing for the Olympics. So you pretty much got to do your measurements for your uniform, pick out your,
Mhm.
rings and stuff like that.
You're just happy to get through it, right? At the time.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
it was an outer body experience. Like I was like,
Yeah.
did that happen? And then you look at your phone, it's blowing up, and I'm like, it really just happened. But it still didn't really hit me.
Right.
It really didn't feel real to me until I actually, got there.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, that just shows just whatever you go through, just stay at it. Just know, better times will come, because I'm sure at that very moment you probably didn't think, how's it possible for me to even get through this race? So that's a motivation for anyone. If you're feeling lazy, you're feeling down, Tara Brown, before she made it to Olympus, was very ill and still went through it and made it to Olympics. So that right there's
Yeah.
motivation. When you were at the Olympics, you did the 400 meters. You actually got personal best, made it to the finals. Um, can you just talk about the experience of actually getting there now to the Olympics, and how was that? How was that whole experience of preparing for it, while you're there, and then afterwards? Can you walk us through that?
So, I mean, you're pretty much, I was preparing for the Olympics since I missed the world team the year before.
Mm-hmm.
And my coach, she did an amazing job of making sure I stayed healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And, she like, that's the reason why I'm not a coach, because they know how to do your workouts and plan it to where you're just in a tip top shape. And, you know, sh even though it was me that was running, she takes the credit too, because she got me
Right.
there. And when we got there, it was just like, okay, now it's time to, prove something to not only to the world, but to yourself. Because
Yeah.
as much as I race against people, I'm really not racing against them. I'm racing against myself
Yep.
and my expectations and the clock half the time.
Mm-hmm.
So when it came to the Olympics, I ran the first round, made it to the semis, and that was probably the first or second most important race, like emotional race for me, I would say.
Right.
I usually walk off the track and I'm fine, but it was, it was about time. So, I think it was like the first two and then the next best so and so times. So I ran my race, personal best. I mean, it took
Right.
everything I could to do that. And then when you go through like the little media pit, so it's like this little maze full of media.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up finding this guy, and I cannot believe I forgot his name, but I think he was with like the Tidewater newspaper or something.
Okay.
I don't know. But he's been following my whole career since I was young.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And he was in the whole media area at the Olympics. And so I stopped, and I just stopped, and I was, because he was asking me questions, and we pretty much was looking at the last race to see if I would actually get in. And I got in, and I just like broke down.
Oh yeah.
It was and I don't know why I'm crying now. It's so stupid, but
That's not
I
stupid.
never
That's
get
big, yeah.
no, because like I never get emotional about races.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh my God, I did it.
Right.
And it was amazing. Like the final sucked, but I ran a PR and I made it to the final, and I was just like, you know what? Like, because I knew I wasn't gonna win. Like, and this is
What made you think that though? I mean,
no, okay, so I'm very realistic with my abilities.
okay. You need
and I
to
feel
be.
like,
You need to be. Yeah.
like I was, as much as I was a technical runner in a
Okay.
sense, like I knew what I was capable of. And I'm not
Right.
saying that there wasn't going to be a miracle and I wasn't going to make it, but
Right. Right.
like I kind of just knew, like, hey,
Okay.
you probably wasn't going to win. Like those girls are running 52s, 51s. Like it's,
Hmm.
you know, I'm realistic with myself. And
Okay.
but it was just like that was accomplishment. Like, it was
Right.
like, okay, well, Tiara, we need you to make it to the semis. Okay, now you're here at the
Mhm.
semis, you got to make it to the final. And it was
Right.
just like, okay, I did that. It was like a sigh of relief.
Right.
I got screwed with my lane in the final. We're not gonna talk about that. But for me, I did what I needed to do at that moment.
Right.
And I was happy with it, which is surprising for me because I'm
Absolutely.
never satisfied with anything. But yeah, so that was like really emotional just being able to get to the final. And then when I got there, it was what it was.
Well,
And
hey, just
yeah,
getting to
yeah,
the Olympics is an accomplishment. Just
yeah.
getting a scholarship to Miami was an accomplishment. Doing what you did in high school is an accomplishment. So I think sometimes we're always hard on ourselves, but when you reflect back, not many people can say what you did, right? And you might be thinking about other
Uh-huh.
people. They're probably thinking the same way. It's like, well, it's okay what I did, but it's always good to be hard on yourself. But sometimes it's good to reflect back and say, hey, I did do that, and
Yeah.
now there's things I can pass along to other folks and kind of share, which I appreciate you coming on board and doing that. So that's awesome. Well, so one thing I really think about when I think of like any sports, but particularly track, I know for me, I probably got the most nervous before race with track because I guess maybe it's you against everyone else. Even if it's like a 4x4, you have your other team members, but it's like all eyes are on you. Well, I think track is you can be very fit, you can work as much as you want, but it's a mental state of it. That's how I see it as. Would you agree? And what are things you did like before the race, maybe like a day before, or even like up to that point to kind of get you ready for it?
So for me, I think as I got older and
Mhm.
as I got better, the more nervous I became. I
Yeah.
was a nervous wreck. Like I
You think
had
because
a
the expectation was even more now?
it was my expectations for
Hmm.
myself. So I can recall back to the NCAA championships. We was on a rain delay
Okay.
and we was underneath the tunnel. And that whole year, because the previous year, my junior year, I was hurt a lot. And I was just like, Tier, you have to win NCAAs because you have to turn pro. Like that was my order of things. Like you
Right.
gotta
Right.
win. And I was just got myself so worked out that I ended up having a panic attack underneath waiting to go run.
Yeah.
And so it was just like I'm hard on myself
Hmm.
regardless of what anybody else has to say.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it wasn't about anybody else but me and what I thought of myself
Right.
and me wanting to accomplish my goals. And I'm not going to say I was the best at it because I really wasn't. Like I was a full blown nutcase when it came to just, and I don't think it was lack of confidence, but it was
Yeah.
just like that desire to really wanting to win
Hmm.
and to do good. And
Right.
I look back on it now and I'm not going to say I wish I changed the way that I was and I wish I was different because that's
Hmm.
ultimately what carried me through.
Right.
Like me being so hard on myself and me being just so worked up. But I always knew that, I had like my little rituals that I would do before I run that would like calm me down. I would just relax. I would just do
Right.
my prayer. And, when I stepped on that track, it was like all the nerves just went away.
Hmm.
All the nerves went away. It was really just when I was like in the bullpen, just waiting to go run.
Yeah.
And it was like when the gun went off, it was just like tunnel
Go
vision.
time. Yeah.
It was just like tunnel vision. And it's so crazy because I don't know how I did it half the time. I don't know how I did
Right.
it because I was crazy, like so crazy. And those
Right.
people be like, Tier, you're so good. You got it. Like, just go out and do it.
Right.
But it's not that easy sometimes,
Yeah. Yeah.
get
Easier said
yourself
than
so
done.
worked up expectations that, you can either let that deter you from doing good or, you can just use that as motivation to be better. And I use it up until a certain point to be better. But, that expectations also was the reason why, I ultimately stopped running.
Right.
So you just got to know how to really control it.
Yeah.
And, you can figure out something that just takes your mind to a nice, calm place. And you have
Right.
confidence in your ability. And you just know that, you set your goals for that race. And if it doesn't happen, learn from it. Like, why? Like, what happened in this race opposed to your other races? And just go back to the drawing board,
Right.
pretty much all you have to do.
Yeah, I think a lot of times, a lot of people say, yeah, you're fine, you got it. But, it's easier said than done. But I think I like how you mentioned that you're a realistic person, even on yourself. I think you need to be. If you want to set goals, like people say, you can do whatever you want. Yeah, you can, but to kind of get to the drawing board, like what's your strengths, what's your weaknesses, where you can kind of balance those out. And I think that could prepare you and know what to expect and kind of get you ready for what you're kind of going after. So I definitely hear you on that.
Yeah, because like when I was running, so like in the beginning of my career, like I never was that athlete who just won.
Right.
Like that wasn't me.
Right.
Like even when I was little running AAU track and summer track and field, and even I mean high school was different. I was a beast in high school. But up until that point though, it was just like,
but that's what probably helped to get there, right? Just going through that struggle.
I was getting maybe fifth, then I went to get fourth, and then I was getting third, and next thing you know, it was like I was always in the top three. Then next thing you know, it was like me and this other girl were rivals, and it was like she's gonna win or I'm gonna win. And then it was just like, okay, well, I'm always winning now, and that's like it was like a steady progression. And people think with anything in life, like whether you want to become a millionaire, they think you would just wake up and they're a millionaire. Like, no, everything is a process. And
absolutely,
you can have all the ability in the world, but there's still going to be some type of process to get to where you want to go. And I literally went from getting fifth or last at some times to getting a scholarship, winning NCAAs, winning states, all those things. It was just like a steady upward progression. And I attribute that to me just working hard. Like I refuse to lose. I refuse not to get to where I wanted to go. And I just worked for it. Like I just worked hard.
Absolutely. If you want it, put goals together, and more importantly, just do it. I think a lot of folks, they kind of stop themselves due to fear, or they're thinking about what other people could think of them. But yeah, just do it. And it's a process. It might not happen overnight. So I think that's great advice. Think about the time at the Olympics. I mean, I think it's great. You're definitely probably tunnel vision, getting ready for the events, but then you're at another country, another city. There's athletes from all over the world. Was there anyone that you met there that you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I met this person? Were you starstruck at all by anybody, whether it be from the US or from other countries? Or can you tell any stories of someone that you didn't meet that you're like, hey, that's not something I would have expected from that so-and-so? Just any short stories?
Starstruck by anyone? Let me see.
Who did you meet that you didn't meet prior that that you remember?
Well, I ran into the USA men's basketball team. I did run into them. It was like late night. And so the one thing about the Olympics is the Olympic Village, there's always a McDonald's. So
at all things with McDonald's, that's hilarious.
Yeah, because the thing, so like my event didn't start until probably like the middle of the Olympics, but you had to be there up until that point. I was like, I'm gonna give me some McDonald's. So I'm just on my phone, and I bumped into, I believe it was Westbrook.
Okay, Russ Westbrook.
Yeah, and then there's like, I don't think they have seen anybody from the USA team, and it was just so funny. So I ended up taking a picture with him, and I sent it to Jessica Beard. She runs track, because I think like she was so obsessed with him. So I ran into those guys, but I think my most excited thing was I went to go see the gymnast. I was really surprised at how small the arena was and how small the floor mat is. I'm like, when you look on TV, you think they got all this room to run. I think that was like, I enjoyed just watching them, and they ended up winning. And it was just like, I think that was like one of my highlights, besides watching the 4x1 women. They won, broke the world record. But I don't think I was really starstruck by anybody. I think my most excited thing was really just seeing the gymnasts. And of course, just cheering for everybody on the USA. That's pretty much it. And then the opening ceremony.
Did you meet Kobe Bryant by any chance? Did you ever get to meet Kobe?
I did. Okay, so at the opening ceremony, so people don't even realize this. So at the opening ceremony, we walked from, like, we all just huddle up in a section, and it's like alphabetical order for countries. And we literally was walking for 2.5 hours to get to the stadium, which it was only on a regular day, like a 15-minute walk. But it was cool because you had fans, you had media all along the route. So once we got close to being like the next country to be called, on the left-hand side, there was like a huge USA flag, and it was nothing but the USA military. And there was cheering for us, and it was just like such a great moment to see them.
Yeah.
And then you walk in, it's like they're calling us. Of course, people cheer for us, but we wasn't the host country. So, you
Mhm.
know, they was behind us. But you're gathered in the middle, and it was like, okay, so what do you do now? Like you're just
Right.
in the middle of the stadium, and you're like, So at that point, we just all pulled out our phones and we just taking pictures.
Right.
So I took a picture with Kobe. I don't know where that picture is. I don't know if I was taking a picture. I knew I was taking a picture with him and somebody
Right.
else. I'm pretty sure they might have the picture, but
Yeah.
I lost my BlackBerry too. So I don't know where the picture is. But I took a picture
Okay.
with him. I took a picture with a ton of people. Mello.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to take any pictures with the gymnasts, but I have like a lot of great pictures from
That's
just
awesome.
like, the track and field athletes. So yeah.
That's cool. That is really cool. Like again, we kind of talked before we jumped on here, but the Olympics is something I look forward to every year, every 4 years. Whether you watch sports or not, I think that's something that it brings the country together. It's unity. I think for me, I'm not a big soccer fan at all, but when it comes to Olympics, the World Cup, I'm in. I'm locked and loaded. You would think I'm like the biggest fan in the world, but it just brings something out of you because it's interesting. Because you being a competitor, there's people there that in the past you probably competed against weeks before, and now you're coming together as a team. So I think that's really cool. It's very inspirational.
Yeah, like I mean, it was. I will say this, like even like I'm a huge track and field fan. Like
Mhm.
even though I'm retired, I really don't want to get into
Absolutely,
it
yeah.
right now. But I'm a huge fan, but I would say that I love the Olympics.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I wanted to go to the Olympics because I saw Beijing
yeah.
opening ceremony.
Oh yeah,
It
that
was
was awesome. That was
it
awesome.
was like
Yeah.
it was breathtaking. It
Hmm.
was so breathtaking. I was like, I got to be there.
Yeah.
And London was a little bit disappointing. I'm not
It
gonna
was
lie.
good. It was a hard act to follow. It's a hard act to follow.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, we couldn't see it because we was in it. So we
Yeah,
was
yeah,
confused
yeah.
about as to what was going on. But I mean,
Right.
I just remember just looking at Beijing and I was like, oh my God, that is so amazing. And in
Yeah.
my mind, I worked it up to be just such an amazing thing. But it's like, it doesn't feel like I enjoy watching the swimming.
Hmm.
Of course, my favorite is track because I feel like that gets the
Absolutely.
most views anyway. But I mean, the Olympics is just being a fan is amazing.
Yeah.
Being a part of it, my experience,
It could be stressful, right? There's a lot going on.
no, for me, I think, like I said, watching Beijing,
Yeah.
I, in my head, worked it up to be this amazing thing.
Hmm.
And it wasn't.
Yeah. Okay.
For me, it wasn't. Like, it was not my performance, because I was happy. I was okay with my
Yeah,
performance,
yeah,
but
yeah.
just like the whole experience. And it's kind of like what kind of turned my career around, which is so funny because like when you're little, you want to go to the Olympics or you want to go to the NBA championships or you want
Yeah.
to go to the Super Bowl. But for me, it was like I got there and then my career took a completely different turn because I was just like, am I really doing all this just for this? I was like,
Okay.
am I sacrificing being with my family,
Right.
working so hard just to experience this? And it
Right.
didn't live up to the hype. And I think once I realized that, it just turned my perspective on
Okay.
why I'm actually doing this and just being
Right.
real with myself. That's not to deter anybody away from going to the Olympics or wanting to go
Absolutely.
to these big things,
Absolutely.
but um, just you have something in your mind, you think it's going to be a certain way and it doesn't, that
Yeah.
can kind of mess you up a little bit. So
Absolutely.
that's what happened with me in my case. And from there, it was like a spiral effect. I was always hurt. And I think it just because I was not that I wasn't working hard and I didn't want to be a professional anymore,
Right.
but it was just like, is a gold medal at the Olympics really going to make me happy?
Hmm.
So I think when kids are really trying to figure out what they want to do and they have these big dreams, I think it's really important to, one, be realistic with yourself,
Hmm.
but two, don't necessarily put all your eggs in one basket. And this is going to
Absolutely.
go against
It's
everything that
everything I will.
anybody
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
professional sports tells you. But looking back at it now,
Hmm.
to me, everybody's like, oh my God, you went to the Olympics. That's so cool. And I'm like, yeah. mm." Like
Yeah.
I told you earlier, like,
Right.
it's okay. But
Right.
for me, it wasn't what was going to make me happy with my career at the end of the day.
Right. Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. I think there's a lot
Yeah.
of things, you do things in life, and then there's things that open your eyes up even more so, and you reflect on it. And I think it doesn't matter what business, but especially in sports, it's nothing that you can do for a long extended time, right? Maybe like Tom Brady's doing it for 20 years, and that's like, oh my God. For people like myself that's in the
He's a
business world,
unicorn.
yeah.
Tom Brady's a unicorn.
It
Him
is a
and
unicorn.
Serena and all them, they're unicorns in my
Exactly.
eyes.
But when you think about like football, that's on average it's like a 3-year span if you're lucky to be in the game.
If
So
you're
you
lucky,
always need
yeah.
a backup plan. So I think where you're coming from, there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's just like it makes you realize what do you really want in life, because it is time and effort. It takes away from family, friends, and a lot of things. And you gotta do what makes you happy. If you don't have a passion for it, you're not gonna put your all into it. So
Yeah, that's what I would say too for all like the
yeah,
young kids out there who, I see these little girls, they go to my boyfriend's gym and I mean,
yeah,
they just got it. And I
right.
used to have it too. Like I used to have that little spark in me, that fire.
Hmm.
And once that fire was gone, I knew that something was wrong
Absolutely.
and I had to change my path. And that's why I ultimately ended up retiring because I just wasn't happy anymore.
Right, right.
And injuries kind of like got the best of me too.
That's
But
tough. Yeah.
um just got to keep that fire. I
Yeah.
mean, just keep working at it. Like you can honestly achieve anything. Like you don't have to, if you think that you're losing out, well, I'll say this too. When those four girls that was ranked higher than me,
Hmm.
I'm the one that went to the Olympics. They didn't.
Right.
So it's like it
Right.
doesn't matter where you are at that moment.
Hmm.
Your life can totally change in 2 years, 3 years, or even a couple months, as long as you put the work into it.
Right.
You know,
Like you said, it's a process. You mentioned that earlier. It's a
process.
process.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So when you kind of think about like having that fire and that that desire to want to keep on going, again, this is like across any aspect in life, any sports, business. If you were to look back at it, and what are some things you think? Say for instance, put yourself in a situation that's like, all right, I want to keep on going, but how do I keep this flame going for myself? For someone that's in that position, what would you recommend? And if you look back to yourself, what have you done? So if we say 2 years down the road, you made it to the next Olympics, like what was that flame that kept you going? What would have that been?
Ah, hmm. Well, I that flame never lit for me, so I
Yeah.
don't really know. Like, sorry to say, but for me, it was like after the Olympics, it was like, okay, you're gonna go back to the next Olympics,
Right.
but at that point, it's like, okay, World Championships, USA Finals, breaking a world record, like that's kind of like your goal. And
Right.
for me, it was trying to figure out, okay, how can I personally get better as an athlete,
Right.
and how can I just turn this around for me?
Mhm.
And so I did everything I possibly could. I
Okay.
changed coaches a couple of times. I worked hard, very, very, very hard.
Hmm.
Um, but I ended up tearing my labrum in my hip in
Okay.
2014, and
Injuries are tough. Tough
that
physically
was
and
a big
mentally.
injury.
Yeah.
That was a big injury, and then I was like, you know what?
Mhm.
I can do this. So I worked hard. It was like I worked hard just to get back to it, and
Yeah.
then the next year pulled my hamstring. And it was just like there was
Yeah.
always something. And for me, like I couldn't personally shake it. Like
Yeah.
that's why I ended up retiring. Like
Right.
it's really hard to even now, like I was watching the American Track and Field League
Yeah.
indoors this past weekend. I was like, I have no desire to run again. Like I literally
Right.
no desire. And it's so crazy
Right.
because I should be still like if you would have asked me when I was in college, like, oh, I'm gonna run some 37.
Right. Right.
But
Right.
it's just like I honestly don't have the answer to that. Like I don't know how to relit that flame.
Right.
Um, I would say try to figure out your purpose and why you're doing it.
That's
And
it.
I think that's something that I couldn't do because I was like, okay, well, why am I doing it? I'm not just out here just doing it just to do it, but
Yep.
do I really want a gold medal? Is that
Right.
gold medal really going to make me happy? And for me, that wasn't the case. So for anybody else, like whether it's, and I told my friends this, I was like, you know what? Sometimes I wish that I still was running. That way my daughter could see me run.
Hmm.
And so for me, like if I would have had a daughter back
Right.
in 2015, 2016 or something like that,
Right.
maybe just her being able to see her mom do something like that would have relit that flame in me.
Hmm.
But I personally didn't have nothing that was like calling me to continue to do it.
I got
And you have to just realize that this might be the end of the road, and that's
Right.
completely okay. Like once I
Absolutely.
retired, I was like, whew, it's like a big weight was lifted off my shoulders.
Right.
So for people who are struggling, just trying to like relive that passion, whether they have been going through injuries or self-doubt or things
Right.
just haven't been working out, like whoever you believe in and whatever you believe in, you have to turn to that.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like you have to just find something that's going to continue to give you the desire and the energy and the want to actually go out there and do it. Um,
Absolutely.
and it's completely fine if that doesn't happen,
Yeah.
you know.
Of course.
But if you can relit that flame, you can fall back in love with
Yeah.
whatever you was doing.
Yep.
That's just amazing. Just
Yeah.
don't let, and but also if it doesn't, then it just doesn't. Like, don't let that
There's
deter
more
you
to
from
life.
anything else either,
There's more to
because there's
life.
always something else. There's always going to be more.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I like that a lot. I like that a lot. When so like growing up, was there someone that you really looked up to as like a mentor, or like I want to be like that individual when I grow up? Was there anyone like that you looked up to?
Well, my big brother Larry was my favorite athlete. So we was
Okay.
like 1 year apart, and it was a lot of track was the only thing he wasn't gonna do. Like he was a baseball player. So
Okay.
like he played basketball, he played baseball, and it was just like, yo, like we here. Like
Right.
that's my favorite athlete. He ended up suffering an injury to his hand,
Okay.
and that kind of ended his career
Yeah.
trying to be, a baseball player. And for me, it was just like, okay, I'm gonna do this for him. Like, I don't
Right.
even think he knows that, but I was like, I'm gonna do this for him.
Right.
Like, I'm gonna do this for my brother.
Mhm.
And, that's kind of like what drove me, to go to Miami and to be there and to work hard. It was just like, yo, I'm gonna make him proud. Like, I know
Right.
he had unfortunate situations happen in his life that, he couldn't pursue his dreams. So I'm gonna pursue my dreams for him.
That's awesome.
And so that's who I looked up to pretty much my whole career. Um, and when I was a professional, it wasn't like, I don't know, like I really like I admired a lot of people in
Mhm.
track and field. And the one thing that I will say though, I'm so grateful that I went to the Olympics my year,
Right.
because that was like the last year that you saw the goats,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I had I had Sonia, I had Lashinda, I had Reese, like I had the goats.
Right.
Like I had Karma, like I had Jet, like I had so much people on that roster with me. And that's one thing I am proud of. Like
Right.
not to say nothing about, 2016 team,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
2012 team was that last GOAT team, I would say. And so
This feels like a high school. It's like, yeah, the class of 2012, the class of 2008. But no, I
yeah,
hear
that
you on that.
2012 team was like,
Yeah.
you had the young ones in there too, but it was like the last year that you really saw all the GOATs
You're
in
right.
one
I
place
agree.
at one time. And it was just amazing for me. But yeah, so it was like my brother. That's who I looked up to pretty much. And
That's
that's
awesome.
why I did what I did, and I tried to turn pro for him.
That's awesome. That's very inspiring. And I think a lot of people, there's always people we look up to in the sports you're doing, but I think it's always family. You see the day in and day out what you guys kind of go in through, and you want to do it for your family. When I
Yeah.
purchased my house here in Northern Virginia, my parents congratulated me. I'm like, hey, this is for us. This is not just me. I was like,
Mm.
I wouldn't have done this without you guys. So
Right.
I hear you on that 100%. When I think about people say like work hard, take care of yourself, that can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. But for you, even though you don't think making the Olympics was a big deal for you, you're like, yeah, I did it. But like, not many people can say they did that. So what are things you did as your regimen, like throughout the day, throughout the year, to kind of take care of yourself, whether it be sleeping, eating, stretching? What are some things you did?
Yes, I mean, pretty much all of the above.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I was on a strict diet, but I
Yeah.
knew what I could eat and what I couldn't eat. But the one thing that I made sure to do was I always worked hard at practice.
Hmm.
Like there was rarely a practice that I can think of to where I just quit or I just stopped. Like if my coach wanted me to run 26 and something, I made sure I ran 25. And
Right.
it wasn't a situation where I was dying towards the
Right.
end of the workout. Like I steady kept improving and improving and working hard. And my thing is like you can do everything that you want off the track,
Mm-hmm.
but you got to put the work in the track. And I also tried to take care of my body as much as I could. I had a lot of injuries throughout my career.
Right.
I had a physical therapist, Lisa Kearns. I use my PTs at Miami. I just did all those things to put myself in the best position possible. I wasn't going out every night. Like I partied in college my freshman year, and after that, it was kind of like it was over.
Right.
So I just made smart decisions, and I didn't put myself in situations that was going to hinder me from making it to the next level or accomplishing my goals. Like I made sure I didn't hang around certain people. Like I said, I wasn't on a strict diet, but I made sure I wasn't eating fast food every single night.
Right.
I made sure that I got proper sleep. Working hard at practice, doing the things that you necessarily don't want to do, which is the stretching, the ice baths, and the hour-long PT sessions. But it just comes with it to where it was just so natural for me to do. Like that's just what I did.
Okay, those are great. So if you want to become Olympian, just listen to what Tiara said. So I think, I think we kind of touched on this already. I think it's been a great conversation. So again, I appreciate it. But, the platform is really to really help inspire folks that want to kind of follow your footsteps of, being a track star, growing up, going to college, getting a scholarship, and then eventually making it to the Olympics. So what advice would you give to someone that's in high school, trying to get to a scholarship level in college, and then next level, trying to make it to Olympics? What advice would you give? I think you touched on some of it, but anything else you want to share?
I think it's really smart too, just to write down your goals. So like for me, what I wish I would have did was kind of like record my workouts and track my progress. I think that's something that you should really do, just because you kind of need a visual to see like where you came from. Definitely do that. Nowadays training is different. Like these girls be out there lifting weights. Like I didn't lift weights in high school,
right?
But that's what they're doing now. But I would say just work hard. Like, I mean, it's so cliche to say, but honestly, there's no way around it.
Yeah.
Like, unless you're just freaking Allison Felix, who she still has to work hard right now.
Right.
But I mean, you just have to work hard.
Yeah.
Like, I can't, like, I loved my high school team. But in college, like a lot of people didn't understand me because I was like, I'm going to do this and I take this serious.
Right.
And anything that you want to do in life, you got to take serious.
Right.
Like I was okay with people thinking I was mean, which I wasn't. I just was quiet. I didn't really like people, but like I did that because like I was okay with being focused on what mattered. Like I was there to run track. I was there to win. And one thing about me, I refused to get beat by anybody at practice. Never got beat.
I had that mindset.
It was always a race. It was always a race.
Yeah.
Like I said, if my coach wanted me to run 26, I ran 25 the whole time. Or I ran 24 and I maintained that. She'd be like, slow down. I'm like, no. Like,
yeah.
Like, but that's just what I did. Like I approached every single workout like, okay, this is the task at hand and I'm going to crush it. And when I crush it, I'm going to crush it. Like, I'm not
just going to meet the bare minimum. I'm taking to the next level.
Not going to and I was never one of those people who ran fast the first one. Then all of a sudden, you see them like dying and they can barely get through it. Don't do that. Don't be that person.
I think that was me back in the day.
Don't be that person. We don't like that person at practice.
I agree. I was that guy.
She said 26. So why are you running 23? Like, and then you up here running 30 at the last one. Don't be that person.
But
just whatever task is in front of you, try to do your best at it no matter what. So 100%. Every single day you go out there and practice, try to get better. Try to improve. Be a student to whatever you're doing. I really wasn't too much of a student with track to where like I really analyzed what I was doing every single time, because at some point I just became so natural to where I knew what I was doing wrong. But ask questions, try to get feedback from your coach. Look at video, look at film, like try to figure out where you can improve. And just having your mind that it's not going to be easy, like realize that, but realize too it's not impossible. So I would say, just be a student to your sport, or whatever you want to do in life. And every single task that comes in front of you, just make sure you go out there and you crush it. And you crush it based off of your ability.
Right.
and what you feel satisfied with. And then when you see that challenge again, you be better than the last time you did it. So yeah.
Absolutely. I think you hit it on nail right there. I like to always try to remind myself too is there's always someone that's better than you. Doesn't matter how much you think there's someone, or if they're not better than you, there's someone right behind you. So if you want to stay the best, you got to keep on pushing. Don't get complacent. So I think that's the
Especially with
reason. What's that?
especially with track. Like
Absolutely.
these old heads will tell you right now, there's young girls like Brashawn, Batman's daughter, just ran
Okay.
in the indoor at the American League, and she was giving those pros a run for their money, and she's 13. So like
They're putting
these
something
young
in the
kids,
food these days. These kids are
these
growing up quick in
listen,
every single way.
but you know
Yeah.
what? I love it. Like I
Yeah.
love seeing, I think the high school girl, she ran an 800 and she ran like a 202 something. She's like only two people in like history and high school girls ever did that.
Oh,
She's a
wow.
sophomore. I love it. Like
Yeah.
these young kids are coming for your spot.
They are.
Like you got to stay on top of your game, because if not, somebody's going to take it. And the thing about the US in general, there's just always talent. There's every year, there's just always talent cycling through.
Right.
And you got to be ready, or they're going to come and take your spot. And then next thing you know, you're out of a contract and they're forcing you out the sport and you're just trying to hold on by a thread. Don't be that person.
Absolutely. That makes me think about how everything in life kind of changes. So it's only been a few years since you kind of stopped, but things has changed a lot. So when you look back on when you ran to where it's now, whether it's people you talk to, what you see, how's it different and how's it the same?
You know what? The only thing different is the faces.
Yeah.
Like I was
you think like the workouts are different nowadays? Like I think about like for football, for example, they're more about drills. They're not so much about hitting each other, but it's about drills. So individual drills are great at. Is that something you think that also happened with track and field maybe, or?
Well, I will say this. I will say that the secret is out, I guess, on how to get better. But there's also, as much as I love the young kids who are coming up and doing great things, I just hope that they're training and they're doing it the right way. And they're not peaking at this young level. I hope that they can keep going. Because people like nowadays, these high school coaches and these summer league coaches or whatever the case may be, they're training you like you're a professional athlete.
Right.
And I think at some point they're taking the innocence away from you and your natural cycle of development, and they're accelerating it. And so I think that's one thing that I would just be really careful about, because your body, especially with track and field, like there's certain events, there's an age frame.
Right.
You know, you're a sprinter. You know, usually you don't see older sprinters unless they're like that 1%, you know, who can still keep going. My event is a little bit different because it's not as taxing, even though it's a hard event. We're not just sprinting the whole time. So it's not as taxing on our body. So you can pretty much run to your like 32, 33, 34, and you'll still be fine, because mine is all about rhythm. But some of those short races is just like, you know, you peak at a certain level and that's all you got, and your body is just depleted. So just the training has definitely changed, because they're trying to get the next superstar at a young age. And so young kids especially parents and coaches, just be smart when you're training and developing these athletes. Like, because, you know, they can do stuff at 16 years old, but when they get to be 18, can they even run anymore? Or are you destroying them? So, yeah, but that's the only thing, like, the only thing changed really is just the faces for me. I know some people that are still running, but you know, a lot of us were not, and that's fine. It's just how it goes.
Chapter in life. Life goes on. No, I like that a lot, because it's not how you start, it's how you finish. So, you know, you can be great at something, but it's the longevity of it. And so I agree 100%. Well, that's pretty much some of the things I had in mind I want to talk to you about. You hit on a lot. You dropped a lot of good nuggets. I think there's a lot of things I even like reflecting in my life, but definitely, hopefully, you know, kids growing up, they're hearing about this and want to and motivate themselves and kind of get some advice for Olympian like yourself. I hope they find this useful, and I'm sure they did. So thank you again so much. With that being said, any final comments, anything else you want to share before we conclude?
No, just, I mean, if there's anything out there that you want to do, just go after it. And it's so funny because I'm struggling with that now too. I'm
Yeah.
trying to figure out, track has always been my life.
Yeah.
And even though I've been retired since 2016, I find it hard. Like I was mentioning how, it was like a gradual progression for me to get
Mhm.
to where I want to go. And I look at myself now and I'm thinking when I hopped into something new, I supposed to automatically perfect it.
Right.
And that's not the
That's not
case.
the
So it's
case.
just
Yeah.
so funny how life comes back at you. And you just got to keep working hard and staying focused and positive and believing in yourself.
Mhm.
And then, you can pretty much do anything that you want to do.